Today I want to start building out a proper virtual assistant, so let's give him a proper name. My virtual assistant is going to be called Ben, and I'm going to give him access to my previous agentic workflow, which was to capture tasks in my Notion database, and if you haven't seen that video, I recommend you go back and watch that because it will be useful. We're going to also give Ben access to a new workflow to manage my calendar, and we're going to start chaining these together. Let's dive into it and see how it works. Okay, let's just have a quick demo of what we're trying to achieve. So I'm over in Telegram and I've got my Telegram connected to my virtual assistant bot. And if you want a refresher course on how to set up this bot, then refer to the previous video with the Notion task capture bot, and it explains how to do this piece. But just like before, let's say I want to please add a task to pay my invoices on Friday. And I might just be polite and say, hi Ben, because we've given him that name. So he should go ahead and add that task to my Notion, and we'll jump over there and have a look in just a moment. But the extra task that I want Ben to now be able to manage is my Google Calendar. There's no good in just having it in the task list. I want to block out some time for me to do that so nobody else can interrupt me or add a meeting and effectively hijack my time. So once he's done that task of actually creating the task, which he has, okay, great, thanks, please add to my calendar 9 AM Friday. Take about, say, 30 minutes. So hopefully, and I've spelled that wrong, but he should be able to infer exactly what I mean. So while he goes to work and does that task, let's jump across to Notion and see if he's done it quite quickly. So we jump over to Notion, and there we can see I've got pay my invoice, and it is due on the wrong day. So he's made a bit of a mistake there. I can have him update that. Hopefully he's got it right in my calendar. So let's dive over into Google Calendar. I've got that open over here, hopefully. And I can see that pay my invoices has been put in my calendar on Friday. So great, Ben's gone to work. There's a little bit of a bug for me to iron out there. And the other thing I'll quickly show you is that is also synced over to my Notion calendar, because I use Notion calendar to sort of centralize all my work across a lot of across tables and various calendars as well. So great, pay my invoices got in there. Let's dive over into N8N and see how we can string all this together. Okay, so we're going to try and dive through this as quickly as possible and hopefully in one foul swoop, and if we encounter any errors we'll just resolve those together, hopefully on the fly, and that'll just all be good learning for all of us. So the quickest thing to do is I've exported my templates already and put them in GitHub so that you can just download them nice and easily. So dive over into my GitHub and I'll put the link in the show notes. I'll try and put all the links that I refer to in the show notes to save you navigating around. But for now, let's dive over to GitHub and download the Google Calendar Manager Subordinate Agent and the Notion Task Manager Subordinate Agent and the Virtual Assistant Manager.json file. Just click on the files themselves, and over the right hand side you see this little arrow into like an inbox tray that's download the raw file. So click that and save it somewhere handy on your machine. Once you've got all those files, dive back over into N8N, and I'm going to recreate the virtual assistant project that I've got down here in my personal folder. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because it's going to allow me to recreate all the credentials and everything like that, because my personal folder doesn't have access to those same credentials, and I've been playing here. So let me delete those and just clean that up so that we're starting from a fresh canvas. So without further ado, let's create our workflow and give it a name for good housekeeping. So we'll call this VA Ben. That looks good to me. Hit the top ellipsis in the right hand side, top right, and import from file, and import the, I know you can't see the dialog box, but import the file that you imported before. For me, that's the virtual assistant manager.json file. And cool, that's our workflow. And there's immediately what jumps out at me is there's a couple of orphan nodes down here. You might remember I've seen in a previous video we added the ability for our agent to respond with audio if we made our request in audio. I found with this demo, when it gives me back information from my Google Calendar, it was too verbose. So I've disabled that for now, and I'll tweak the system prompt at a later date so that it's a little bit more succinct in its response, and then I'll probably re-enable those nodes. Back to the matter at hand though, we've got a bunch of exclamation marks here on some of these nodes, and that's just basically waiting for us to give it some credentials, otherwise those nodes are not going to run. So click into them and hit create credential, and let's dive over into Telegram and create a new bot so that we can get a new access token. So here we are over in Telegram, and you'll see that I've been playing a fair bit here, but from Botfather, and if you don't know how to find Botfather, just give it a very quick Google, it comes up immediately, or refer to my previous video where we set up the Notion task capture. We go over this bit at the start. So hit /, just do new bot with these shortcut commands. It wants us to figure out a name for our bot. So I think I just used VA bin demo before when I was playing. So let's call this one VA, we'll call him Big Ben. So VA Big Ben is going to be my name. Cool, that looks like it's available. And then we need to give it a unique username. So that will be, say, VA Big Ben _bot. The username needs to finish with bot. So that looks good. And what we want here is this access token that it gives us right in the middle. So just click on that and it will put it in your clipboard. And then we dive back over to NA10 and paste that token in. And as another matter of good housekeeping is just always name your nodes and name your credentials, otherwise you end up with Telegram account, Telegram account 1, Telegram account 2, and it's hard to know what you should delete. So to make it clear for me what to delete, I'm going to have VA Big Ben Demo. I'm going to use that quite a lot, so I'll just store that in the clipboard. And I can't actually remember if I pasted in the key there, so let's save that. If I haven't, oh no, it looks good. The credentials created successfully. Okay, that looks good. So let's go back to the canvas and back to the canvas here. There's an interesting nuance with NA10 that even though when I go into another node that uses Telegram, it knows to use this credential because it's the only credential that it has for Telegram, but it didn't resolve the issue on the canvas until I go in and then back out of that node, and then same again at the end here. With the response, just go in and back out of it and it resolves those exclamation marks. So the next thing to do then is basically the same thing, create an API key for the OpenAI model that we're using a couple of times in this workflow. So click into one of those nodes and hit create a credential and delete that out. I'm going to give this credential a name. So this is going to be, I'll use that from my clipboard, VA Big Ben. And then we'll dive over to the OpenAPI keys. So you'll need to go to platform.openapi.com. And as I said, I'll put this link in the show notes so you can jump straight to it. If you've not signed up for OpenAI, obviously you'll need to sign up for it. The way to find this location, if you're just navigating around, is if you hit the settings cog, it will bring you to this page with these menus down the left-hand side, and just look for API keys. So hit create a new secret key in the top right. Let's give that a name for our consistency. I'll take that from my clipboard and I'll just give it access to the default project and create the key. Now I have to copy this key at this dialog box. If I close the dialog box, then I won't have access to it again. So let's just copy that key right now, go straight back to NA10, hit apply that key and save that. Cool. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. And open up the node for the chat model and just go in and back out of that. Now we've got a couple of subordinate tasks here, and in my workspace these subordinate tasks are automatically mapping to my other project folder. I actually find that, not sure if I like that or if I don't yet, because I probably will have tasks all over the place. I do probably need cross-project access. But for the purpose of this demo, it's not really a true test because you won't have those subordinate tasks. So let's go ahead and get those subordinate tasks set up before we do anything further. Make sure to save that before I leave. And let's create a new workflow. So the file that I'm going to do here, it doesn't really matter what order we do it in, Google or Notion first, but let's just do Google. Cool, and there it is. And we've got the same situation with our OpenAI chat node, so let's dive into that. And it's picked up the credentials, so we'll just go back and that resolves that a little bit. And then we need to authenticate against our Google account, so we'll click into one of the Google nodes, choose a credential. Of course we don't have one, and we should for this just be able to sign in with Google, simple as that. And I don't think you can see on my screen here, but it's launched another window where I'm just choosing my Google account and I'm just signing in as per normal. I'm already signed in this browser, so I just have to choose the account and accept the permissions. If you weren't signed in on the browser, it would follow a normal workflow. So my connection is now successful, that I don't think you can see on the other dialog box, and it's dropped me back now to the main NA10 window, and you can see the account's connected. So let's close that window and go back to the canvas, and we'll just go into each node here. So if I go into the nodes and back to the canvas and save that, I'll give that task a name. So let's call it Google Cal subordinate. That should make it nice and clear, and that's automatically saved it for me when I change that name. And if I go back to VA Ben and go to my calendar manager, you'll see that it's pulled this information in from the file, so it's given it a name, and it's automatically connected it to the task in my virtual assistant folder. So if I click the drop down list here, I should be able to find Google Cal subordinate in the same folder. So I'm going to choose that, go back to the canvas, and let's do some testing. So I'm just going to disable my Notion task for now and dive over into let's dive over to Telegram, and we'll test the workflow. So I'll leave that on test workflow and go over to Telegram. And I have a feeling that when you go over to the bot, so when we created this bot, it gives you a little link. So let's follow the link, and it wants us to hit start. And the first message actually becomes /start. So if we dive back over to NA10, it's probably, yeah, it's ran that workflow based on start, which is fine, to be honest, because it validates that everything's wired up properly. It went through, it accessed the chat model, and ultimately, if I dive into here, has given us a response, and the response is asking how it can assist. So if we go back to Telegram, we can see that we've actually got that response. So that's actually kind of perfect. Now at this point, the main point of this video is showing how these agents string together. So I want to go into NA10 and show where it links from one agent to the next. So this calendar manager is passing in two things, and we've named these things chat input and Telegram ID. So if you're creating these nodes rather than importing templates, you have to play around with these. It depends on what your sub agent is going to do and what your inputs are in your source agent. But for us, and I find it's becoming more and more common that I'm using Telegram, the Telegram ID is needed by your subordinate agent so that it can pass in the chat memory. And then the chat input is really just the instructions, as if you're testing. So if we look at this from the flip side, and I go to so let's save that and go to my calendar subordinate agent, the input here you'll see just basically marries up. So I can add stuff in here if I want something else passed in, but what I really need is the chat input that will get passed to the OpenAI model and the Telegram ID. And then you can probably see in executions how that was used. So if I go to the executions, which is not showing me an execution yet because I haven't actually run one. So, well, I haven't run one that called this task. So if we jump back over to my personal, sure, I'll just save that. Jump over to VA Ben. Let's test the workflow. I'll dive over to Telegram. In Telegram, I'll ask what's in my calendar for Friday. And then that should trigger an execution of the subordinate. So let's have a look at how well it does there. Cool. Okay, so it's found the stuff in my calendar for Friday, and if we jump back into my browser, and I can validate, sure enough, that on Friday it's found that I need to pay my invoice, and the aircon people are coming around, and I've got volleyball. Okay. Cool, so the final thing to do then is hook it up with the Notion Manager task. So let's go back into my workflow, and this is probably the most complicated one when it comes to actually wiring up the API keys. So let's go to, nope, not create credential, create workflow. We'll call this workflow Notion Manager subordinate. Hit the three ellipses up the top right, import from a file, and then the dialog box I know you can't see, but choose the template JSON file that we saved earlier. We've got basically the same situation, so let's click into our nodes that have exclamation marks. We've already got the credential for OpenAI, so just drop straight back to the canvas. For Notion, we don't have a key yet, so let's create a credential for Notion, and bear with me because I'm using a little bit of memory here. So we'll give this an account, so we'll go Notion, the credential here is for Notion VA Big Ben, and I'll save that. I didn't put in the key, so let's jump into my Notion /integrations and create a new integration, and I'm going to call that, associate it with the correct workspace where my database is. I'm going to give it a type of internal, hit save. I need to give it a name, so I'll give that VA Big Ben demo. That way I'll know to delete it after this. That's been successful, but I don't have my key or anything, so let's go and configure the settings. So here we are, I've got my key, and I'm just going to, before I save all that, I'm going to give access to everything, and also grab that key into my clipboard and hit save. And that doesn't actually give any access to anything in my Notion. So the other thing I'm going to do is, maybe I'll just go in another tab here to the right. So if I go into my Notion, and I want to go to the database here that I want to give it access to. So I want to give it access to, actually, that's just a view of this database. So I want to go to this database, hit the ellipsis in the top right hand side and go to connections, I think. Bear with me because my memory is a little bit hazy on this. There we go. I had to have a bit of a think because it wasn't appearing, and I thought it would be in managed connections. So hit connections, and then you can just search for the connection that you want to give access to. So I can search for VA Big Ben and give a VA Big Ben access to this page. So cool, now I've got 4 connections on this page, and VA Big Ben should be able to access my tasks database. And if I go back now to my credential in NA10 and paste in and save, cool, okay, that looks like it was successful. So I'm going to go back to the canvas, just go into the other nodes with Notion, and save that. And now if we go back to Telegram, is the moment of truth really. Can it create a task in my Notion? So let's go back to Telegram. And let's say, can you create a task for me to, so let's say, study how to assign Notion connection permissions to a page, so I don't look like an idiot on the next demo. And of course that's not going to work because I need to actually activate my to activate VA Ben. So I'll go back to NA10 and go back to the personal parent page and into VA Ben. I can either activate it or re-give it the message, or hit test workflow and it should pick up that message that's waiting. So let's hit test workflow, and I can already see the problem here. I've not enabled that Notion task manager because we left it disabled before. So we'll wait for that to finish. I've got a response. I'm just going to enable that, and I'm going to resubmit that same message off screen here. Okay, so we've got an issue with the task manager. So I'm just going to dive over into the subordinate Notion manager template and see if I can work out why that failed. Okay, so I finally figured out what the actual problem was, and it was really simple, or actually a bit stupid. So when I re-enabled this Notion manager task, or when I imported the file in the first place, I forgot to update, and I know I talked about it before, I forgot to update the workflow that it's accessing from the virtual assistant folder workflows that I've already been working on to the new task that we imported. So because I've got a lot of workflows going on here, I got myself in a bit of a tangle. But if we update that drop down list to the workflow that you will have imported here, Notion Manager Subordinate that we called it, then now it should work. So let's go back to the canvas and hit test. And if I go across to my Telegram, and you'll see that I was trying to figure out what was going on here. And if I do create a test task called test 5, and if we go back over to NA10, you can see that that's currently running and it's accessing the Notion Task Manager. And we should hopefully be able to see once that's done in my Notion. So let's dive over to there. Now I've got that new test task called test 5, and also the other test task that I was messing about with when I was trying to figure out what's going on. So that's all I really wanted to show today, was how to really wire up that sort of hierarchical agent structure, and hopefully you can start to see what's going to be possible as we build out lots of mini agents that can do a specific task, can be managed by an overarching agent, or perhaps a multi-structure, kind of like an organization where you've got some sub-managers as well. Hopefully that helps. Until next time, have a good one.